Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to this neighborhood meeting. I know it's a little bit warm in here. The plan for the evening is we'll do maybe about a 15-minute presentation. I brought, unfortunately, Dr. Mendoza had a last-minute cancellation. Dr. Weaver and Dr. Botkin from the University of Rochester graciously accepted my last-minute invitation. We'll have them as speakers as well. Lieutenant Tim Fay from the Department of Environmental Conservation. Bill, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes for some opening remarks, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. This is a great turnout. We really appreciate it. We have a number of our Brighton Police Department officers who are with us. We have Deputy Chief Mike Desane, Tim Karch, Captain Jose Caraballo, and who am I missing? I think that's what we got. And I also want to introduce, we are committed to inclusion in everything we do. Our interpreters tonight, Paul and Kaylee, thank you for making this meeting accessible for all of us. As the Chief said, you're going to have an opportunity to hear from the DEC tonight, from a physician, and we really do. We know this has been a traumatic event. Whether or not you were personally, or a family member was personally bitten, we understand the significance of this event. So we really do welcome your questions when we finish with the presentation. We hope we will have people here who can answer all your questions. If there's something we can't answer, we will try to get back to you. And in particular, one of the things that I want to let everybody know and make available a link to you, our statistics, the state health department compiles rabies statistics statewide by county. They do it monthly. They do it by animal. So it's a very comprehensive set of data, which we're happy to share with anybody that would like to see it. Feel free to give us your email address, either to myself or to the chief, and we'll get it to you. Not only does it show the numbers of animals, and both domestic and wild animals, it shows the number of animals that were examined for rabies, as well as the number of animals that actually had rabies. And one of the things you will see is that number in Monroe County is very, very low. It doesn't break out anything, you know, deeper than the county. It's county-wide numbers. But what you will see is very, very low throughout the period. You know, it goes without saying, Brighton has a lot of natural habitat. And in that habitat, we have a variety of animals, including foxes. So we're going to see foxes. It's part of where we are, whether you go out on the trail or certainly in your neighborhood. You're going to hear more information tonight about fox dens that have been identified in this neighborhood. But I think what you will also see, and you'll hear from these experts tonight, and from the data, is that those foxes, as well as other animals in the area, recognizing fully that this was a very traumatic event for all of you involved, and we feel really very deeply for each of you, especially those of you that were actually bitten. The actual numbers of animals and the likelihood of an attack from any kind of an animal is very low. I think you'll also hear some information about the importance of foxes and some of these other animals in the natural system. One of the things, of course, that they do is attack rodents, minimize the number of rats and some of the other rodents that in some ways are, you know, maybe more problematic to our neighborhoods. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chief Cathaldi for some remarks. Again, thank you for being here tonight. This will be a continuing process. Feel free to reach out to us. And by the way, before I go, two more people I do want to introduce. We do have two of our town board members who are also here tonight. Councilmember Chris Warner is here. Councilmember Jason DePonzio is here. So with that, let me give it back to you, Chief.
Okay, how's that? If you can't hear me in the back, just throw something at me, raise your hand, and I'll make sure that I project my voice. Where'd my PowerPoint go? Technical, can you help me with the PowerPoint? Did it just time out? I apologize. Well, I'll keep talking while he gets that going. So, if you don't know, the Animal Control Division falls underneath the, oh, there we go. The Animal Control Division falls underneath the Police Department. Animal Control responds to about 1,000 calls for animals every year, including wildlife. As the supervisor said, it is very rare to encounter wildlife that has rabies. It is even more rare to have an encounter with wildlife and a human where there's a bite. I've been a police officer in this town going on 25 years. This is the first time that I remember that we've had a human contact with an animal where there's been a bite. Not to minimize it, but that just shows you the prevalence or the lack thereof of contact between humans and wildlife. And as Bill said, he stole some of my thunder with some of the stats through the Department of Health. Again, it is very rare. One of the main goals and one of the main missions that Animal Control does is they educate the public about wildlife. And I've already talked to some of the people here in this room. We went door to door and spoke to at least 3 of the residents. We're going to do a better job at that. We've actually created a brochure that we'll begin handing out once it comes off the printing press. Rather than just verbally talking to residents, we'll hand out a brochure, we'll direct them to the appropriate resources if they have nuisance wildlife on their property. But the overall theme tonight is that we coexist with wildlife. It's just a part of life. Might have jumped ahead. So as part of our education campaign, and I put that date up there so you put that in your calendars, October 7th of this year, we host an annual rabies clinic. We do that every year. One of the reasons we do that is because rabies is more prevalent in cats and dogs than it is in wildlife. If your cat or your dog has a contact with wildlife, they can't tell you that they've been bitten. So that's why rabies is so low in the United States. In some of the underdeveloped countries, you'll see where there are no rabies vaccinations for dogs and cats, rabies is much higher. We do have a heart trap program here in Brighton. It was started many years ago, mainly chipmunks, squirrels, possums, those type of animals we will remove from your property. Foxes in this instance, and the DEC is here and they can explain it more in depth, they are much more difficult to trap and have a heart trap. And what that really is, it's a wire-looking cage where the animal will walk in, trip a lever, and the 2 doors fall. 2,300 dogs a year. That's what we license and relicense through our Animal Control Division. That is a lot of dogs. On top of that, we seize about 30 dogs a year that are either off leash or have been abandoned by their owners. So it's quite a lot of work that they have to do. We only have 2 animal control officers. They are both part-time. One has been with us 7 years and the other's pushing 40 years of service. So they are well experienced. So these are the locations of what happened, just so everybody realizes what we're talking about and there's no misinformation out there. I did not put addresses on there. I did not put names on there, but these are the 6 locations, the 5 locations where the fox had contact with a human. One of the locations, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, it bit the shoe of a person and made no skin contact. So we counted that as a bite as well. The other location is on Holyvale. There's actually Holyvale up near Winton. It bit 2 people. It bit a young child, and then a person, the father was trying to pry the teeth off to protect his child, and he received puncture wounds on his hand. The other bite was on Pelcham, and the other one on Tillstone. We actually went out and walked in the neighborhood. Our animal control did. We were able to locate 3 foxes den, or fox dens, 2 on Holyvale and 1 on Tillstone. To the best of our knowledge, speaking with the homeowners, I physically went out and looked at one of the homes. They appear to be vacant. The fox and the kits have moved on. Can you see it okay? So just to let you know, the first call that we received was at 4:45 p.m., and the fox was actually about an hour and a half after that, we were able to get it cornered, and we were able to shoot the fox. Now, you may think that that's a long time. I've talked to other people who think that that's a pretty good job, but it is irresponsible for us to shoot wildlife in that suburban, densely populated area when a fox is running through the neighborhood. It's just not safe to do. We have to account for the rounds that we shoot. A fox is small, we could miss. The round could go through the fox, strike a house, and we could wind up with a person that's been injured or killed. So we have to make sure that we can get the fox cornered, get a good backdrop to where we can shoot the fox. So as a part of that, about 1 hour after the call, the Department of Environmental Conservation was en route to the scene, just to let you know. And we weren't operating in a vacuum. I heard this call come in from home. I notified the deputy chief. The Department of Environmental Conservation was en route in a very short period of time, because they are the experts in dealing with nuisance wildlife. Now let me introduce Dr. Aaron Weaver. He can discuss about rabies, the prevalence, and just a couple more slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. Dr. Weaver.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm Dr. Aaron Weaver. I work in the emergency room at Strong Hospital. I was asked to come and just talk briefly about rabies, what it is, the prevalence, and options as far as treatment or prevention. Rabies is a very serious and very terrible disease caused by a virus and transmitted by animal bites. Globally, it is a major cause of mortality in other parts of the world. Thankfully, in the United States, human cases of rabies are exceedingly rare. On average, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, there have been about 2 or 3 cases per year of human rabies actually developing throughout the United States. So 2 or 3 cases per year in the United States in recent history. So those numbers are low. I was able to find on the Department of Health website for New York State that there had been no cases in New York State of human rabies acquired in New York State in the past 20 years, as of 2021, when that information was posted. I don't know if there's been any cases in the last 2 years, but it is unlikely. Again, that's cases of humans actually acquiring the rabies disease, not being bitten by a rabid or potentially rabid animal. When someone is bitten by an animal that has rabies, there is an incubation period between the bite and the development of clinical rabies. The incubation period is variable, but it's usually somewhere between 1 to 3 months. So a fairly long incubation period between getting bitten by a rabid animal and developing clinical rabies. During that time, there is treatment called post-exposure prophylaxis, which is a series of shots that can be given over a 2-week period, basically. Post-exposure prophylaxis for rabies is extremely effective, about 99% effective at preventing the development of clinical rabies. So it's very, very good treatment. Once clinical rabies does occur, there is essentially no cure, and it is uniformly fatal. Essentially 100% fatal once the symptoms do occur. But again, during the incubation period of generally 1 to 3 months, there's very effective post-exposure prophylaxis treatment that can prevent that from happening. Any questions, or should I hold questions for later, Chief?
I think you hold questions. Let me flip to the next slide. Thanks, Doc.
Okay, thank you.
And There we go. So that's my contact information. I'll leave that up there. We put out information immediately. Our main source of information now is Facebook and Twitter in the new digital age. That's all my contact. If you want to turn the lights on and we can open it up for some question and answer. Lieutenant Fay, doctor, go ahead. Do you need them? Go ahead. You have a question?
Well, my mom was bitten, so my concern is she's going through the series of rabies shots for 2 weeks, the 5 treatments.
Why do I have to get an extra one?
Oh, I don't know, hold on. Because you're special.
She is, by the way.
After the series of rabies shots, what happens between the next 2 months of how do we know that there's no clinical, I forgot the term already, sorry.
I think, as I mentioned, the post-exposure prophylaxis regimen that we do is very effective at preventing clinical rabies from developing. And my understanding is that it's on the order of 99% effective, very, very effective. And that's part of the reason for the low prevalence of human rabies in the United States is that in addition to kind of controlling the animal reservoirs of rabies and pet vaccinations, we also have very effective post-exposure prophylaxis, treatment to prevent the rabies from developing. That said, I cannot imagine how anxiety-provoking it must be to have sustained a bite from an animal that not only could have been rabid, but was confirmed to be rabid. That would be very hard to emotionally cope with. As far as what to do about that situation, typically my understanding is that people getting post-exposure prophylaxis get a series of 5 total shots. 1 injection of something called immunoglobulin on day 0 when the series is started, and then there are 4 vaccinations that are given on I think day 0, 3, 7, and 14, if that's correct. For most people, that's the regimen, very, very effective, and no other specific testing is done. Basically, you expect people to do well, and there's not anything else to do at that point. You've done everything you can do, and it should work. I do believe that people that have certain pre-existing medical conditions and immunosuppression for various reasons do receive a 5th dose of the vaccine and have antibody titers checked in their blood work to see if they have responded to the vaccine. So there may be some cases where people do get additional testing to see if they have responded to the vaccine.
What about the 1%? You said 99% of the time rabies is prevented with the vaccines. What about the 1% that might get rabies?
So to be clear, the 99% is the number that I came across in preparing for this. And I think that is generally accurate. I don't know if it's 1%, 0.5%, 1.5%. The general notion is that almost everybody who receives the post-exposure prophylaxis will survive and not develop clinical rabies. If clinical rabies does develop in that last 1%, again, unfortunately, it is essentially 100% fatal.
But doctor, you did give some a number in terms of how many human incidents of rabies there have been in the last 20 years.
It is scary. It is scary. Yes, I mentioned that the prevalence of human cases of rabies, people actually going on to develop rabies and get sick after a bite, is on the order of 2 or 3 cases per year throughout the United States, with no cases of that happening in New York State for the last 20 years, at least as of 2021. That's for bites acquired in New York State. There are some cases of people being bitten by dogs overseas and returning with rabies.
Yeah, and not to interrupt, Doc, but let me use the mic real quick. I don't want anybody to think that we're minimizing it by saying that it's rare to be bitten by a fox, that it's rare to catch rabies. We certainly don't want to come across like that. As the supervisor said, I feel terrible that it happened. I know he feels terrible. We've been meeting with the team here for the last week and a half and coming up with a game plan, taking a look at our procedures, taking a look at our protocols on how we can do better. Again, I've talked to people an hour and a half from the time we were notified that the fox bit somebody until the time we killed the fox. I've heard some people say, that's great response, Chief. That's, it's wonderful that you did it in an hour and a half. Well, as the Chief of Police, I want a 5-minute response. I want a 10-minute response. I want to do better. I want to make sure that if and or when this happens again, and hopefully it won't for the next 25 years, that we have good protocols in place and we can handle it quickly. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of the complaints that I heard, quite frankly, come down to customer service. Come down to what we're talking about tonight, empathy. There's kids in the neighborhood. I understand that. I've got kids. You go back to the one slide that I showed you with the wildlife, with the little fox walking on my front steps. That was my house. That was my house. I didn't kill the foxes. We waited till the kids went, little coyote scent, foxes were gone. We've got some information back here to help you. There's a Repel program by the DEC. I forget what the acronym sounds for, but some very effective ways to help minimize contact with wildlife and to help wildlife move along. Next questions? Anything? Go ahead.
So this might be hard to answer, but will the county follow up with the victims who were bitten?
Yeah, and like I said, I do apologize. Dr. Mendoza had a last-minute cancellation. I was on just to let you know the relationships that we have here in Brighton. I was on the phone with Dr. Mendoza within 1 hour of this happening. And it was Friday night, and I could hear music in the background. He was probably out to dinner, and he took my phone call. Doc, am I thinking right? Are we doing things right? And he was reassuring me, yes, do this, and this is how we'll follow up. But yes, the Department of Health, I believe the doctor may know more than me, but it's a specific thing. I think they have a lengthy follow-up with it. I believe, but.
I'm not sure what their follow-up is.
Yeah, we will, and we do have all the names of everybody. Dr. Mendoza has all the names of everybody, so I'm sure that there's follow-up. But that's a great question. I don't want to ask you. Talk to me later. Okay. Talk to me later. Anything else?
Other questions? Steve, we'll get this over to you here.
Thank you. First, I don't know if anybody's determined this yet, but was it the male or female that was shot?
We did not determine that. I checked today, and I mean, it's a great question.
Was it the bright red one or the real grayish one?
I wasn't there. I don't think the lieutenant knows. He's the one that actually shot the fox. Our main goal, quite frankly, we were trying to get that fox contained. We needed to get the fox on ice quickly because it was a weekend, and then it's got to be shipped out to the Wadsworth laboratory. So that was our main focus, but I mean, a good question.
So,
I think
well,
the answer.
whichever one survived of the parents and the kits, of which there were at least two, it's not, you don't know where they are? I mean, they're not in the dens you found, but you don't know where they are.
No. All of the dens that we took a look at appeared to be vacant, number one. We still have some have-a-heart traps out in the neighborhood. We've captured none of the kits or the adult foxes.
If the one fox, the one adult was rabid, what is the likelihood that its mate is also rabid?
How about my DEC guy? Let's get you in here. He's the expert on wildlife. I wouldn't know, and I certainly wouldn't want to guess.
So I spoke to our Division of Wildlife, who regulates wildlife, and they do all the studies on rabies and the rabies vector species. And it is very unlikely. They wouldn't give me a percentage, it happens this amount of time. But it's like the 99, it's a game of percents. We don't see two fox in a den come down with rabies. And that was one of the first questions when I started working with Brighton PD on this specific issue is how fast do we have to move because are there more fox out there? And more fox out there that could have rabies. Of course, any vector species could have rabies at any given time after a bite or an exposure, but the likelihood of two, same den, different den, same neighborhood, very, very unlikely.
So how would this fox have acquired the virus? How do foxes get rabies? From other foxes or from skunks?
And any other vector species, and like they said, we preach prevention because it's the household cats and dogs that really, those are the ones, because we all know you should stay away from wildlife, especially if wildlife is acting strange. But we don't do that with our own pets. So protecting ourselves is getting our pets protected, vaccinated. Like they said, the statistics are so low. Usually when we find a rabid animal, like if we have an animal that's in distress or an animal acting weird, say there were 100 calls a month, well, they all end up being distemper or an injury. Usually when we find a rabid animal, it's already deceased or hit by a car. So very rarely do we have rabid animals. So the statistics on that just aren't there, rather than saying, yeah, it's very unlikely. And that's why we want to learn how to prevent wildlife from having that den under our house, prevent wildlife from scratching or biting our animals, our pets. And if they do, then at least they're vaccinated, so we're protecting that. But the big thing is prevention, and we in the DEC, we always preach conservation, right? The wise use of our resources. So we can reiterate a lot of the good things. If you want to talk, the fox, they help out the rodent population. There's a lot of good things, but we do have to educate ourselves, and that's what this is for. These pamphlets are great. If you know where a den is and you don't want the den in the neighborhood, then in that certain area, well then fence it off. Do a really good job of blocking it so they will not reuse that den. But they are here, they are with us, and they are going to find other dens. That's why we just have to educate our kids and be vigilant about prevention and education.
Steve and anybody else, again, we're happy to share the statistics with you. One of the things that jumped out at me, because that was a question I had, when you look at the statistics and you look, at the county level, what you will see is not 3 and 4 and multiple cases with any species. You'll look on the rare occasion that they even have one, and it is rare. It is one. There'll be one bat. There'll be one skunk. So the data itself suggests that there is very little immediate spread from, within a nest, a den, whatever the species is.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
So I was not directly affected. I wasn't bitten. It was several of my neighbors that were bitten, but I am concerned.
Sure.
And I'd just like to try to clarify some things and try to understand how going forward the response might change. Mm-hmm. So one of my big concerns is that the people whose house the den was at, who have had foxes for years, and I love seeing the foxes in the neighborhood. I'm not terrified of them or anything like that. They specifically reported unusual behavior a week before this incident. Mm-hmm. And not that it was predictable that this fox had rabies, but it seems like either then, or certainly when people started being bitten, that there was a period of time where people could have been warned to stay inside. Sure. If you could just let me finish. If there had been, say, a person running loose with a gun who had robbed a store, I would imagine Because it's something like that did happen in the Tillstone Place neighborhood, where a stolen car appeared in somebody's driveway, and somebody heard their door being rattled. It was at night, there was a police response, and the police went door to door to let people know what had happened and to make sure everybody was okay. So the first two bites maybe were really close together, and maybe there was nothing that could be done. But for some of the other ones, it seems like just driving up and down the street with the PA system, warning people to stay inside, that might have helped. And I'm just wondering what you might be thinking about doing differently if a situation like this occurs in the future, so that you don't have so many people affected by it.
Right, and that's a great question. You're talking about like the hyper reach system? Normally that would not be utilized for something like that. Right directly to your question, about a week prior, we were notified of a fox den. I spoke to the one resident. The resident had had foxes living underneath their back house for 20 plus years, never had a negative encounter. And they told me, this fox looked different when I talked to him. There's only one true way to test for rabies, and that's to kill the fox and test the brain. Or kill the animal, I should say. But to let you know, and I'll tell you right now, we've identified 3 fox dens that are vacant. We've only identified 3. There's a 3-acre stretch of land just north of Holyvale. I've not walked it. I can assure you there are probably fox den there. This week alone, we've received probably a half a dozen calls, Mayflower, Warrington, the area over here off of LeKine and Elmwood Avenue for dangerous looking foxes. Many times they have mange. There's a picture floating around on the internet where the fox lost all its fur, everything was, that's mange. That's the common occurrence that we have. So we're gonna do a better job. As I said, when we go out and a person reports a strange fox, they have a fox den underneath their porch, we're gonna make sure that they're well educated before we leave, number one. We'll make sure they have all the information to contact the DEC. If they want that removed from their property, we don't do that. Brighton Police do not do that. So we'll do a better job of educating, but it's not feasible every time a strange fox is in the neighborhood or a fox is in the neighborhood to put out a blast alert, there's a fox in the neighborhood.
What about when they start fighting? That seems like an immediate emergency that requires urgent notification.
Yeah, so we were out looking for that fox. I can tell you what was going on. You say about a person with a gun? We were on a man with a gun call over at Monroe Community College when that came in. And when the officers responded, we're not 100% sure where the first fox bite took place, whether it was on Tillstone or on Hollyvale. We were trying to parse everything together, and I was really hesitant to put a timeline when the foxes were bit. How big of an area do you do? And it happened quick. I know an hour and a half sounds like a long time. It is a long time. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was 30 minutes. But by the time the 911 calls come in, you get officers to the scene, you take them off other calls for service, get them into a neighborhood. I think it would create more hysteria than anything else, from my experience. But go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, from my point of view, I got a warning from a neighbor via text message, which was great, stay inside, because 2 people were bitten. But of course, the police and the animal control who were responding had no idea that I had been warned. And you can't tell who's outside by just looking at the fronts of houses. People have backyards. So I was aware, which was great. And then I saw animal control in the neighborhood, and in fact, they were standing at the driveway right opposite my house, and then I saw the fox. So I put the window up and I yelled down at the animal control officer. I said, the fox is right there, literally right there. Didn't even turn to look at it, and just said there's nothing I can do about it. That seemed a little odd to me. I mean, why are you there if there's nothing you can do about it?
Right, and I openly admit that. I mean, it goes back to the high level of customer service that I expect the employees of the police department to provide to this community. And I stand here and I own that. Again, these are very infrequent encounters, and I'm not making that as an excuse, but that specific animal control officer really didn't have a lot of experience dealing with wildlife that had bitten people. I've been doing this 25 years, 2 times since I've been a police officer. 2 times.
We have someone back here.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that the biting, the incidents had already started, and when he was warned that the fox was there, I think that was at least to show that he was willing to do something about it. Even the people who complained before were told just play loud music. Yeah, that is a cool thing when a fox is a normal, regular fox without, a tendency to like attack. Because I was chased by it. It's not like I just came out and was chased and I had to run around and it caught my left leg. But I'm just saying is like my only issue is that there is a lack of information that is being transferred from one department to the other. And that's the thing I emailed you, sir, about. I'm not worried. This has happened. It's a natural occurrence. I know foxes are there. We love them. And you can get a bite. But the information is what I'm concerned about. Why is there no good transfer of information from one department to the other when you were warned that the fox was not acting normal or had all that mange? Because I was standing down outside with the Hansons, waiting for the fox to leave their area so they could go back home safely.
Sure.
And it was a fox with mange, and it was a female fox because she was constantly taking her kit back to the bush so it could be safe. So she was trying to do whatever she was doing. So I'm just, the lack of information and the lack of transfer of information is my concern. And what are you going to do about in the future? Because all our kids right now are so traumatized by this. There are no children playing outside, no one gardening, and that's not fair. Thank you.
Well, I'll start with the last point first. It's not fair. And the overall theme is we are going to coexist with wildlife. That is just, and I know you don't want to hear it. I know it's a traumatic experience in the neighborhood. And I can't guarantee that there's not another fox with rabies. There's not another I can't guarantee that. As far as the information goes, our primary mission, our number 1 mission that evening was to get that fox cornered and to get it captured. Because we know if we didn't get the fox captured, people have to go through rabies shots. We've had employees in our police department that have had to have rabies shots by being nicked by a bat when we couldn't capture the bat. That's why I acted quickly in that first hour to make sure DEC's en route. I'm on the phone with Doc. It's an hour and a half, start to finish.
I'm not against wildlife.
No, I don't think you are. No, I understand.
But we love wildlife and we coexist with them. But what are you doing about the information that is given to us and that can be worked on? That's my concern. And not for now, because now what is done, but the future. Like, how are we going to handle this?
Well,
when someone says there's something, what are we doing about it? That's my question.
I guess directly, we have plenty of information here for you to take home to help you if and when you interact with wildlife. I'll go back to this one picture. That upper left-hand corner, that's my house. A fox was living there. And I knew they were there, and as soon as I identified a fox den, I was on the phone. How can I get rid of the foxes? I didn't want to kill them. Coyote scent worked. I put coyote scent around my yard. Foxes were gone in 2 days. So that's what we can do as a police department, is help better educate the public when we get those calls for the fox in my backyard, the fox living under a porch. We can help better educate the public.
If you find more dens with foxes, are you going to get rid of them? Assuming maybe they have rabies?
No, I think that...
I mean, are they protected? Is it?
Yeah, you cannot legally trap wildlife unless they are a concern. And what we heard from the DEC, number 1, the level of prevalence of rabies is very low. And again, we've identified the 3 dens. There are fox living in your neighborhood.
They're in my backyard.
I know for a fact they are. And I hate to keep saying and harping on it, 99.9% of the time, the fox is running through your yard and they're gone.
Right.
In the most of the times, the foxes that our animal control interacts with have mange. And nature will run its course. They'll survive the summer, and without fur, they'll die in the winter.
You won't relocate them? They're in a neighborhood?
No.
You don't want them there, they won't relocate?
The DEC will not relocate wildlife. It is illegal to do so. Think of transmission. If we were to relocate wildlife with mange, they have an invasive species program that he can talk about. They don't even want boats going from one lake to another until you clean your boats, because they don't want to transmit the little microbes and things from one lake to another. Same way with animals. To relocate foxes from your home to another part of town or to another neighbor, we're just relocating a problem that they may have potential parasites, disease, mange, and those things. If you personally don't want foxes on your property and they're causing damage and causing destruction, we will give you the information to contact the DEC. They will provide you with information to get rid of the foxes. But again, and I want to stress this, I'm talking from experience. There are simple ways to remove foxes from your property without trapping and killing them. Coyote scent worked for me. Some of the information here, and I know there's coyote scent. There's a couple other easy things that you can do to repel wildlife from your yard, and it works.
And then the other, yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's not sitting well with me is my mother-in-law was bit, and after the ambulance left, I arrived. I was speaking with her neighbor who took care of her until medical personnel arrived. As I'm talking to them, the red fox comes scampering around from behind her house towards me. So I yelled to her neighbors, "The fox is there." So they darted in. I turned to the street where you had one officer and also you had the animal control person. I yelled to them twice, "The fox is here, the fox is here." They both looked at me and totally ignored it, like, okay. Now, for me being a taxpayer, that really rubbed me the wrong way, because one, I knew there was a threat because she was already bitten. I didn't know other people were bitten. But on my way over, I put my ball bat in the back seat because I didn't know if I was going to get attacked getting out of my vehicle. So as I'm going to my vehicle, it's moving closer. So I open my door, grab my bat. If that animal did not turn around and walk the other way, I would have clubbed it in the head and probably killed it and put my life in danger of getting bit as well, because the police officer as well as animal control were basically telling me, just by ignoring me, we're not doing anything.
And I've heard that loud and clear. I've heard it. I went and spoke to some of the neighbors who are here in this room tonight. I've heard that loud and clear. And I'm telling you, I've been in this department for almost 25 years. I have more friends in this community. I have more invested in this police department than most people. That is not the level of service I expect as chief of police. I've worked for 2 other chiefs of police. I was trained by them. That is not the level of service I expect. I expect empathy. I expect action. We've got to do it safely. I do not expect officers to pull out their firearm and start discharging their firearm in a neighborhood. That is extremely dangerous. Ricochets, misses. The foxes may look big, but they're really, their bodies are pretty small. So we were trying to get the fox cornered.
Verbally, we needed some comfort.
I got nothing from them. It was just being ignored. And you would think, you know where the fox is, come over and say, you know what, we're taking care of it, we're going to try to trap it, but I got nothing.
Right? It's not acceptable.
And it's been over a week, and it bugs me every single day.
I can assure you the message has been heard by me loud and clear, and I can assure you the message is and will be resonating with the department loudly and clearly. because it is not the level of service that I expect.
Thank you.
It is not, and I apologize for that.
Thank you. I probably need to say something since the fox came from my yard, backyard. And I want to give you a little bit of a timetable. And I want to give you a little bit of the timetable that this occurred. Let's see. I first saw this fox. I first challenged it actually on Friday the 14th of April. It was in the backyard. I had fertilized the yard. I'd had a bug man spray the house. It was late afternoon, and it was on the edge of the woods. And we've had lots of foxes before, and we've had them under our deck. I've used the repellent. We've sunk the wire down. They still get underneath somehow. At any rate, usually I can just go out in the backyard and they take off in the woods. And we've had, as I said, 4 families of foxes in over 20 years. This was the first time that we had a fox that did not leave. And so I started walking toward it on the edge of the woods. I wasn't very smart. I wasn't thinking. I got to within 6 or 7 feet of this fox, and it was crouched down, and it showed its teeth, bared its teeth at me. I thought, oh no, this fox is trouble. This is not, they're usually very afraid of you. I picked up a stone and was able to throw it at it, and it took off in a northeasterly direction, neighborhood behind us. And I went in and I told my wife about it, and after I got bawled out for getting that close to a fox, we said...
She's a good wife.
Yeah, she is. Then on Sunday, the 16th of April, I was out in our back patio with 3 kits, which were under our deck, and she was not behaving like a normal female fox. She was not taking care of her kits. She was chewing on herself. She had mange over the right hind quarter. Her tail was all the fur was off except at the very end. There was a fluff of tail, that was all that was left. She was very nervous acting, and this was late Sunday afternoon on the 16th, so we were gonna call animal control the first thing Monday morning. And just think, because we were pretty sure that this fox, in addition to mange, was acting more like a rabid animal. So we called on Monday morning, early Monday morning on the 17th of April, we called animal control. They came right out. They were very responsive. And I walked the man to the backyard. The foxes weren't out. The kits were under the deck. Of course, the fox was never there when you want it to be there. But I told them what it looked like. I had taken pictures on that Sunday, the day before, the ones I think you've probably seen on all the television stations, local TV stations. Took 2 photographs of that fox, which clearly everyone could see was mangy, and I don't know if you can tell it's rabid from just looking at it, but its behavior was erratic.
Right.
Animal control came out, and we talked about it, mentioned that it probably had mange and that affects its eyesight, and that's why I was able to get within about 6 feet of this fox without it doing anything before it ran off, since generally you don't have to get close to a fox at all and they take off. I said, is there any possibility that you can trap it? And he said, well, they won't, they're generally pretty smart. They won't go into have a hard trap, as I understand. Actually, we did trap a fox about 20 years ago and have a hard trap. I had one, and animal control from Brighton came out and relocated it, I think, over near Monroe Community College, is what we were told. So I know they can get in a trap. It's probably very difficult to trap them, but I know they can be trapped. It may be highly unlikely, however. Saw the fox again on the 20th, Thursday the 20th. That's the day before all the people were bitten. And then on Friday, my wife and I were out for a walk about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we walked into our cul-de-sacs, and I think that you had been bitten at that time, going out to your mailbox, and a number of us were out in the street. The police were there, and so I went around the squad car. He was sitting behind the wheel, and I showed him my photographs on my iPhone that I had taken a couple days before, and just said that, you know, possibly this could be the fox that's in the neighborhood. It's one we've seen around. with its 3 kits. And then we walked up to Tillstone, and we were there, and that's when you were bitten. We saw the fox in my front yard herding 1 kit. By this time, there was only 1 kit left. We didn't know what happened to the other 2. I assume they died from just negligence. I don't think the mother was in any shape to take care of them. And that's when you were bit. And then I think it chased Tony back over to his house, and that's when I think it went through the woods into the adjacent neighborhood where I think it bit several children and where the other 4 bites were. So I just wanted to give you the timeline because that's the sequence of things that happened. The single kit remained for another 2 days, and I haven't seen it since. So I think it's just through neglect. It didn't know how to hunt on its own. It may have still been nursing, in fact. I don't know. But at any rate, I haven't seen the kit, so I think it's probably died as well. But that's a timeline, just so you know. Animal control was called on Monday, so they did have at least a 4 or 5 day warning. And they told me some of the same things that others were told. And, you know, that's the story.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Another question? He's down the road.
I just want to inject, so one part of the timeline. So I think our animal control call happened before all the other ones, because as animal control was at my house, the other call, he didn't know the street name, but I think it was Tilson or Peltham, came in, and police officer came in after that. So I think that was the beginning of it all over on Hollyville. Just to inject it into it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they were confused when they got to my house. They were like, they realized there was 2 calls. So I mean, my concern too is, at that point, animal control knew there was a fox acting a little weird for a couple days. We called, there's a bite. Another bite pops up on the screen, and the advice I was still given was play loud music, force the fox away, as opposed to maybe something's wrong with this fox. So you say that you were trying to trap the fox, but at that point, you were not trying to trap the fox yet.
Cornered, I should say.
Cornered the fox, yeah. So I mean, just from a reaction standpoint, I would think animal control, you're around wildlife for a while, you know there's a fox that's been called on a couple times, might not be the same fox, who knows, same neighborhood though. And at this point now you have 2 bite calls, and the response is still normal fox behavior.
Yeah, my answer is what I've said before. That's not an acceptable response.
Sure.
It's not. And another question here.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Oh, sorry. So we live on Tillstone. We didn't know anything that was going on until Tony told us, one of our neighbors. So kind of to reiterate what Jean said, Jean was one of the other victims of the fox. I understand you can't do a blast, but when all these calls are going on, probably 10 days before the incidents, or at least a week, is there any way you guys can let the neighborhood know? We have like E-list among all of us. Bill, even if somebody notified one of us, we could blast. I had no idea, and we walk every day.
I appreciate that. I really do. I was at another community meeting. Literally, it wasn't over a fox, but it was about the notification in the neighborhood. And the Tillstone, Palcom place is like one of those unique little offshoots of a neighborhood. And I was working with Mr. Federson to get a communication out. Well, there were 14 people on the email list to come to this meeting tonight. How did you find out about it?
Oh, I found out about it from Tony.
Right. He knew, because I had met him.
Was on that list because Lee spoke earlier tonight, including
Right.
copying in the people at 82 Tillstone.
And so what we did specifically for this meeting is we went actually door to door and put leaflets in door in every neighborhood, just to make sure. But the communication, and we found this before, and Bill will tell you, in some of these little niche neighborhoods that don't have a strong email chain, a neighborhood, it doesn't have to be per se a neighborhood president, but a strong email chain, sometimes they get left off of communication. There's no doubt.
So
Yeah.
if we can update that and give you a representative.
Sure, that'd be great.
That will help.
I always ask for those.
No information at the Evans Farm Tract.
What's that?
No,
I'm sorry?
no pamphlets at the Evans Farm Tract.
No, we did. We did like 90 homes. Holyvale, Cohasset, Tillstone, Currywood, Linwood. We did that entire tract on that map between Westfall and Holyvale, where the 3 fox dens were located, and all the bites took place within that neighborhood.
Because the rest of the community doesn't want to know about this.
No, that's not true. No, that's not true. It's on, yeah.
I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Only here in support.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. It was, it was on our Facebook page, and I hear this frequently. That's how I communicate. I communicate via Twitter, communicate via our Facebook page, which I think has more likes and all that stuff. I don't do Facebook, and communicate through the media. I mean, I sent out a tweet. I know, and I understand. You're not old, but I was communicating that Saturday that this had happened, and then the media picked up on it. We were doing media interviews, so yes, we can work on the communication in the neighborhood, and any help that you have, I would appreciate it. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think everybody has done a good job summarizing the events, animal control and all that, so I won't dig into that, and I want to kind of focus on what you mentioned earlier on in the meeting protocol and what we do going forward. And again, I don't want to sound repetitive, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And sorry, I lied. One thing to details. When I did talk with animal control, when they did come out, kind of got mixed signals on what the protocol is, who can do what. Understand completely that animal control probably didn't have the ability to address the situation as we would like to have had happen. Of course, what's realistic for them to do what, and that's fine. So that aside, but we learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is escalation in protocol. It would have been animal control to DEC, getting DEC involved, and then see if they can come out and do whatever they can do. And understand they're also limited in what they can do in these situations. But just want clarity to what you said before. There is now protocol in place, or there was, but a reissuance of protocol or fine-tuning of it. Can you just elaborate on if there is such a call? We have a similar call, let's say someone says it's acting rabid, right? What assurance do we have that it's going to go through the specific stages?
So step back from the biting incident and go back to the initial incident where somebody called relative to a fox acting strange in their backyard. I have a den underneath my deck.
Yep.
As soon as it comes off the presses, animal control will not only verbally go out and speak and inspect the den, they will hand them an information packet. If they feel that that fox is a threat, if that fox is damaging their property, they can contact the DEC. I mean, I know what happened in the case. Call DEC. No, that's not what we do. We recognize and we refer. We give you the information to contact DEC. DEC will be notified. They'll put you in contact with the nuisance wildlife control operator, if I have the acronym correct. They will come out, make a determination if they can legally remove that fox from your property. That's step one. The protocol for a rabid fox or a rabid animal that has bit somebody, that is a very high level of protocol. A fox running through the neighborhood is probably not a high level. An animal, a fox, anything, a raccoon, a bat in the house that has nicked somebody, the number one goal is to get that animal. Because we know if we don't get that animal, you have to go through rabies shots.
Right.
In this case, the animal's rabid. But imagine if we didn't get the animal at all and it ran off.
Yeah.
Somebody would be getting rabies shots because they have to get them because you don't know if it's rabid.
Yeah.
So that's what the protocol is.
Okay, so let's say this all takes place again.
Let's hope not.
And let's hope not. Chances are, again, for another 25 years, we understand it's rare. But again, kids in the neighborhood, we understand. So if we do have a report that there is an animal acting odd and it might be rabid, and instead of just dismissing it and saying, it has mange, is there anything that will be done to ensure, you can't do it until you trap it and kill it, I guess, but ensure that it has rabies, or it's really just, you have to wait until it leaves or dies off itself?
Well, the only known method, to my knowledge, is to know that if an animal has rabies, capture it, kill it, and examine the brain. That is the only way to know. The vast majority of foxes that our animal control deals with, the vast majority that have mange. It is very common.
Okay. All right. Yep, because I was told.
But if there are concerns about wildlife on your property, we, the town of Brighton, is not in the business of trapping and killing wildlife on your
Or
property.
DEC?
DEC can refer you to people
Okay.
who are.
Okay, all right.
Question behind you.
Hi.
Hello.
I live on Tillstone, and I used to do a lot of bike riding around, and I encountered quite a few foxes, and
Sure.
I got scared a couple times because they were not interested in going away as I was coming. And there was in back of the church on, the Lutheran Church. I called animal control and asked, well, what should I be doing? And there were also a lot of squirrel tails around with no squirrels attached to them. And so they gave me a number of a guy down in Canandaigua to call and come and trap them in my yard if I wanted them, or at the church, and I did talk to the guy, and he said, yes, you can come and trap them. He's approved by the DEC. But is that what we should do, is call somebody to come and trap them if they're...
Yeah, I certainly do not want you to leave this meeting tonight thinking that we need to eradicate the fox population in any neighborhood.
That's not what I'm saying. That's what I was told by your animal control officers. We can't deal with that. If you want to be rid of them, I'm saying it's not in my yard. I have a fenced yard. They don't come there, but they're all around. But if they were to come in the yard, what should we do? And he said, call the guy in Canandaigua.
Yeah, I'm not quite if I'm getting the premise of your question correctly. We have some pamphlets over here to help repel wildlife, some tips to prevent frequent
Right.
encounters with wildlife. But again, just this week alone, probably at least half a dozen calls for foxes throughout town because everybody's very aware of it. We do not go out and routinely trap
Right.
or treat
Right.
them as nuisance wildlife because they're running through your yard. A fox living underneath your porch, threatening
Right.
behavior, different level, should be going to DEC. Make sense?
I
Kinda,
got
sorta?
that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, your officers told me they can do nothing, and that I should call, if I was concerned about foxes in the area, I should trap them, have them trapped by this guy in Canandaigua. Gave me the name and the number. I talked to the guy, and I'm not paying, $600 to trap a fox that's laying on the, sunning itself and not afraid of me. What I'm saying is, would somebody go look at the fox?
Well, sure, we just,
Teach them? But then they said no.
we handle about 1,000 calls, animal calls a year, our animal control does. Most of it is education. Most of it is educating the public to avoid wildlife encounter. And again, if I'm hearing you correctly, you saw a fox and someone told you should be able to trap that fox, it's not on your property, it's illegal for you to do that.
Right, but that's what your guy was telling me.
Well, if that's the
I'm saying that the foxes aren't moving. They're kind of laying there lounging. You're riding your bike. They don't get up and walk away. They're just...
Oh, well, yeah, if there's a fox that's sick or injured and you call animal control and the fox is there, we certainly will address that.
They said they don't do that.
I'm not aware of that. We will do that. If there's a fox that is sick or injured, laying on the side of the road, laying in your driveway, and you were to call the police, we would go out and address that. We would not leave a sick or injured fox that is laying there at the end of your driveway in distress. We would not do that.
Are there any other questions?
If you happen to run over one by mistake,
The question is if you hit an animal.
Yeah, wildlife, I don't believe you have to report foxes, hitting foxes. If there's- Yeah, no.
like a deer, one time a deer came out, I got a deer on 590.
Well,
I got a deer on 590, he came at 10 o'clock in the morning, did $6,000 worth of damage to my vehicle.
You'll be calling the police for an accident report.
Exactly. And the DEC came and got rid of the deer. But let's see, one's going through our neighborhood and I'm driving down our street and I hit it. Do I got to call DEC if I killed it or Brighton Animal Control?
To come pick it up, yeah, you can contact Brighton Animal Control. We'll make a determination if it was rabbit or something like that, we may take it, but it'd probably go to the highway department for destruction.
See, the fox a lot of them are in Brickyard Trail.
Sure.
They come across, and then
There's a nice photo of a fox right out here in the lobby from the Brickyard Trail. What else?
Anybody else?
I'm just curious about that comment about the deer. So I live in the Evans Farm Tract. My house backs up to wildlife, and the deer are in my backyard. And a deer one day was in the backyard dead. It looked like it maybe had been hit by a car over on Winton Road, maybe came across or hit the fence and didn't quite make it. But when I called animal control, they removed it from my backyard to sit at the front for refuse to come take it. And I said, you can't leave it there. There's kids getting off a school bus.
Right.
But they left it only in the front yard for refuse to come take.
The highway department will remove that animal. Yes, we would not, animal control would not remove a deer.
Oh, but they moved it to my front yard.
Out of a courtesy.
So the courtesy to me was, I didn't want the kids to get off the bus and touch it or see it or.
Sure.
So I guess that wasn't very clear to me. Highway department came, would they have come to the backyard?
Maybe, maybe not.
Oh my God.
We don't have a responsibility for to maintain your property.
Yeah, I wasn't concerned about my property.
No, I know, but imagine if we did.
It was too heavy to throw over the expressway wall.
I did post on Facebook for anyone looking for venison for Thanksgiving, but it wasn't a go. Thank you very much.
Make sure you get some informational bulletin, and if you know of anybody that needs follow-up with me, well, my contact information was up there. My name is on the Town of Brighton website under Police Department. Give me a call. I've been in some of your homes. I'll come back out to some of your homes, especially, and it's going to be, this is recorded, I believe, right? On YouTube?
Yeah. Yes.
I believe.
we got a lot of deer in the neighborhood. If the fox that's rabid bites the deer, okay, say on a leg, and the deer is in your yard and poops all over the place, and I'm cutting the grass or touch it, can I get rabies from that?
It's saliva. It's saliva how you get rabies.
The answer was no. There were lots of people shaking their head, but no.
Not from bees.
I think so.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody. Shirley, do you have another? No.
I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.
Jean left, and I wondered who else was bitten by a fox. Is there anyone else here? I know Arbery's father, and I met Arbery. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to identify yourself, but if you do, you feel free to stop up.
We didn't get all the answers we need. We know that. There's much to be covered and much to be done in the future. But I want to thank the town hall and especially
Well, thank you.
my chief, David Catoldi, for his sense of humor in handling this. He's done a wonderful job, and we do have to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley, and thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. If you didn't get any of this material, please do, and again, feel free to continue to reach out going forward. Thanks all.
Warm one tonight.